Well, Emma, thank you so much for joining us. We wanted to kind of talk through Emma's eras, a bit like Taylor Swift, but
All right.
similar vibes, I suppose.
I didn't get tickets for that.
Did you not?
No, I didn't.
Joe, that's shocking.
It's okay. I'm over it.
We got to start firstly by congratulating you
Thank you.
on your gold at the Olympics. We will dig into that experience a little bit more, but we've got to know what it was like. The final whistle went, you had achieved exactly what you wanted after what, 78 days?
I think so, something like that. It didn't feel that long, but it was about that.
And could you quite believe it? Did you allow yourself during the kind of tournament to think this was actually really could happen?
I think it caught up in that because I was just having a lot of fun. So all I kept thinking was just another day of working with a tremendous group. The sun was shining in the south of France, then you're in Paris, then you're in Lyon, Marseille. Like, it's a great life, international football, but it was a tournament. I visualised being in that tournament like so many times since I was a kid. So I played it out so many times in my head that by the time I got there, I felt like I'd already been there before, which is such a weird feeling, but one that, relief still. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, you win in the final. It was a tough game, and I felt relief, but I felt more joy than I felt from a trophy lift in a long time.
I bet. We will come back to that, but we want to rewind back to Emma's early eras in the US. Long Island Lady Riders, Iona Gales, and of course Chicago Red Stars. What was it about the US that drew you in? And I suppose in the end, did it kind of contribute to making you the coach you are today?
I know I often say that statement, I was born in England, made in America, and I stand by that because I was a young 21-year-old, got an opportunity to go and work for Major League Soccer camps for $120 a week. And didn't know what I was doing. Been working across random soccer fields across Long Island and Manhattan for 7 years, and it sort of extended beyond there. And I sort of went into it just wanting to travel, wanting to adventure, wanted to, I don't know, just find myself. I finished university. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I just didn't want to be doing what I was doing. So I got the chance to develop in a place that just I just kept getting opportunities all the time. And that's why I have so much gratitude for what's happened this summer, because I wouldn't have got those same opportunities had I been here, whether that's being hired as a Division I college coach or a W League coach or, a regional or state coach, or even WPS coach. All of those experiences shaped me to be the coach that I am when I came back to England, and that's why I'm so grateful for what happened this summer.
We've just come back from 5 weeks in the NWSL before the Olympics, and we had a great time out there. Football really is a different kind of beast over there, and the way that they approach it, both from a fan point of view, but from the athlete's point of view as well. Do you feel you really embrace that in your kind of coaching style?
I feel like it's a part of me. I think when you spend your entire 20s somewhere else, it's going to have a profound impact on you. And I've lived through WUSA, and when WUSA folded, then WPS folding. So for NWSL to come through, I don't actually know how many years, it might be 5 or 6, to watch the league finally make it after the success of 99, it just shows you how long it does take and the investment that's needed. But what I think the NWSL does have is some serious investors across the league that know how to sell football stadiums, know how to sell an experience. And I've been used to that from my time out there. So I'm sure that was probably much different from a WSL game, but one that I think is welcome and one that fits with culture.
I think when we look at it, it's about also trying to learn from what happens over there and see what obviously it doesn't translate across to England completely, it never will do, but it's about trying to learn the bits that we can take to make it more I guess, of that kind of entertainment factor for the people coming into the stadium and everything like that?
I've always been an advocate of like, who's to say it can't work here? You probably after being there, for 5 weeks, so much of America has shaped who I was coming back to the beginning of the WSL. That I still think that having the most creative and innovative people involved with WSL, and I do think that we're getting that right with Nuco and the new leadership team that are there, that who's to say we can't replicate some of those things? I think we should be open to it. It doesn't mean we have to repeat everything the way the men's game is. I think creating a fan experience, like there's one actually, I remember I'm not bringing up Sockgate,
The DJ though.
Listen, Sockgate created an evening that I'll never forget, and that was a DJ. And you have those experiences I know I've done them once in London where you go to the Zoo and they have like a little bit of a party and a DJ. Why can't we do that for women's games? Why can't we have DJs before the game, some part, at half time or whatever, and allow people to have drinks in the stands and create a different experience? I feel for us that we've got different fans that come to the women's game, and we should create different ways to bring them into our stadium.
It's about embracing that kind of new culture that's coming out as well, I think.
Yeah, and I hope that that's where the game does go, because what I learned that evening against Arsenal, the crowd were fired up because they'd been sat waiting for a while. I never forget coming out of the tunnel at Stamford Bridge and thinking, oh my goodness, the crowd are absolutely buzzing. And I think it had a major impact in the first 20 minutes of the game.
Absolutely.
Sure. When you came back to England after your time originally in America, it was in 2012, so just after the Olympics, all of that buzz kind of, when we look back at that time, it was our catalyst to starting GirlsontheBall, but also I think it's one of those catalysts for one of the booms that's happened in women's football ever since. But it wasn't easy initially at Chelsea, was it?
No, it definitely wasn't easy because I had a full-time job at Covent Garden. So I remember going to work all day, get on the moped, drive to Waterloo, get on the train out to Cobham, coach till about 9:30, then get on a 10:30 train back to Waterloo, get on the moped, drive back to Camden. I'd get home about midnight, then go to work again the following day. So my life was much, much different in those early years because I didn't think that was what I was going to do. So I was like, listen, I'm fine with this. I'll help set the team up, set the club up. I'm not going to, coaching is not going to be my thing. I'm going to end up sort of working in business or do something like working in the family business, which I thoroughly enjoyed. But yeah, no, it was difficult because there wasn't a lot of resources, didn't have full-time players, shared facilities, all of those things. So it was a huge build from a lot of people over a long period of time. And I don't actually think I think it took about 8 or 9 years before it felt like, okay, there's the right setup around the team. It took a long time.
Did you really have to fight for it? Was there a willingness? Because of course now we talk about Chelsea as leading the way in a lot of those areas, but did you find resistance when some of those battles when you wanted to change things and professionalise things?
No, I had really good allies at Chelsea. I had Bruce Buck, who's one of them, and then Emma Wilkinson, who was like the director of communications. But they ran the foundation where Chelsea Ladies sat underneath. I always felt like ask at the right time, ask the right person. You have to find the right person, ask at the right time. But always put it forward and put it in a way that made it senseless not to invest in it. And during the Abramovich era, I had brilliant supporters at Chelsea that invested little by little, chunk by chunk. And I might have been able to get more earlier. I'm very it's reward based. Like earn it, then we put it in place. Earn a little bit more. And it isn't always about winning trophies. Sometimes that earn is just gradual improvements all of the time. And I always wanted a solid foundation, just like keep reflecting what do we need to keep adding each year on and off the pitch. And they always support us to do that. Even with a limited budget, like people always think, Chelsea got the most money. that is definitely not the case for a lot of years. But we certainly work towards a budget that, and you guys already know this, budgets in England have never been anywhere near what they were at Barcelona and Lyon. And so when they talk about Champions League success, I'm like, do people really realise that Barcelona and Lyon almost always had more than double any other English team over this whole period?
Yeah, absolutely. When you're a successful manager, of course, we talk about your winning mentality. That is something we often spoke about at Chelsea. But how much has defeat played a role in your mentality? When you think, the final day of 2014, those bloody games against Wolfsburg, I feel like we were there. We've been there too many times. And of course, the Champions League final. Like, how much was it a spark that just lit another fuse?
Oh, good question. I think winning does the same to me. So I just think that's who I am. I don't think it takes a loss for me to learn. What I know is that often, so many times you win and you don't do the same work you do when you lose. And I always question that. I'm like, why? Why is it when there's a loss that you dig deeper into it? You should dig just as deep when you win in order to stay there. So what I learned probably from the losses was exactly that. Like, don't get too low with it. And if you're going to do a deep dive, do the same when we lift the trophy. So what I did create, I think, from the losses is that consistency in process. Like, don't be any different regardless of the result. I think was the thing I probably learned. And the defeats are just like, they're painful, no question. Luckily, I've not had too many of them in recent years, but anyone will tell you when you lose games, it's a couple of days are hard. They're always hard. But yeah, I'm just all about progress. Like, how can we progress? How can we take it to the next step? But I do want to be really frank and say every time we lifted the trophy, I did exactly the same thing.
Something I actually noticed about the Barcelona year, that final, was that you played the double legs, and every second leg you were better. It was almost like you took something from the first game and really managed to implement it quite quickly in the second.
I think the team that doesn't do well in the first leg, and they get that second opportunity. If you think even just this recent Olympics, Germany game 1, Germany game 2, sometimes there is an advantage to being the losing team in that first game, because there's something about you just figure some things out in a certain way. What is actually hard is when you're so dominant in the first game, is how to be dominant again in the second. Like, that is, I've realised that through so many Champions League in the reverse end, but also in international football. When we had Germany, I was like, I've been in these situations so many times. I know these are the hardest games, but you just have to find a different way to do it. What I know is that nothing ever looks the same. And it's moments like, you talk about those Chelsea moments, Maren Mjelde, I'll never forget Maren. Maren scored some of the most unbelievable game-winning goals in Champions League for Chelsea. There's moments like that will live with me forever. But there was just an unbelievable resilience at Chelsea. That's what I think that team always had.
That Lyon game. Yeah, the penalties. Oh,
I mean, listen, it has to be said. You tell me how many players in this world could step up and take a penalty at the end of 120 minutes and then take another one a few minutes later.
Ice cold.
That's Maren Mjelde for you.
Yeah, for sure. Something you're known for is player management. And have you always been that kind of people person and understanding what someone needs to get the best out of them?
I'd say it's one of my strengths, definitely. But I always want to say this with, to be really clear. Like, if you imagine you're having to manage, at a minimum, in my case, 20, 23 players. You never get it right with all of them. And some you can't connect with at all, even if you try. What I've learned is that you might not, but someone else has to within your staff. So you have to try and find, as a manager, you've got to try and get the best out of each and every one of them. For some, you can't reach in the same way you might others. Just make sure you've got it covered. I think with the player management piece, it's just like, treat people as human beings. And I do see them like that first. Like, everybody wants to win, everybody wants to do well, but I think the more and more that I've coached, the more I talk less and less about football with them.
And I guess it's about using the rest of your playing squad as well, and the leaders within that to connect with the whole squad and bring them all together.
It takes an army to win, and it's not just them. You might have someone in your medical team, you might have someone in your backroom staff who will help out with that. That's one of the things I've learned is that you've got, what you can't do is leave anyone behind. When you've lost someone, whether that's because their own heads are not right with it, or they're unhappy, or they've got to go, or you've got to try and find some way to keep resurrecting that, even though you can never make anyone happy. That is the hardest job of a manager. You can only play 11 players.
That's for sure. And when you look back at it, so far in your career, all of the players you've seen through so many different types of players as well, which ones kind of stay with you in terms of their development under you?
Well, that's impossible to answer because, as you can imagine, going back to the US, I've reconnected with players back in the US. So I've got some of those girls that I coached 20 years ago that are still in my life, and I'm still coaching them as mums or whatever that might be. There's no question I'll have some really special relationships. I was talking to Gemma Davison yesterday because she's still coaching at Chelsea, and I still coach Gemma. I'm coaching Gemma how to coach, or she might ring me up and say, how do you think I can handle this situation better when it comes to coaching? I think when you build connections with whomever you build it with, Kaz Carney might ring me about commentary, or I had a chat with Eni Aluko about sat behind my boss in the Olympic game. There's random relationships you'll have, and what I've found is even if they're pissed off with you at some point in time, it takes a little bit of time, and then they come back to you and they're like, by the way, can you help? Can we chat through this or stuff like that? I'm always someone who's like, I don't know, I want people to be happy, and I'll help where I can. And if you don't need it, no problem. It's not like I ain't got anything to do.
You have obviously, used your platform to speak out on issues within the women's game over the years, often becoming the go-to voice at times.
Yeah.
Was that a responsibility you embraced, or was it something you kind of understood came with the job and the role? Because you were often the one we'd come to first for something, right?
I mean, listen, it was a duty. I had to do it, and someone had to do it. And I've always said this, like my dad he really pushed me, you have to be the one to do it. You've got to say controversial things to get things, like whether that was improve officials or get more money within clubs. And he always used to say to me, like, show off the standard you're driving in your own club, and it'll drive everybody else's house up. He says, just like anybody who's got the nicest house on the street, everybody wants to replicate it. And with that, like, sometimes you think, why does it have to take that way? I think I came to women's football in this country at a time when the WSL started, when I used to hear so much negativity around women, it was like, oh, you can't pay them too much, otherwise it would bankrupt the game, or, you shouldn't invest in this because otherwise, it will take it away from that. And I just think, why do we always hold back? Why? I've always made sure, where possible, try and pay women like as much as I possibly could. Forget fairly, as much as I possibly could. And if my budget was bigger than yours, then you should pat me on the back for that, not like slaughter me for it. And I just always felt like we've been so conditioned in England to just ask for less or be quiet. Don't say too much. Don't hang yourself out a little bit. And I think I really struggled with that. So I had to be the person to do it. But by the end, for sure, I definitely had enough of it.
Yeah.
I felt it was time for, the game had reached the point that I wanted it to, and it was the right time for me to exit.
But also there's other voices that should be speaking out, right? And that was maybe one of the things we thought, when you were leaving, kind of thought, who's going to be the one to be willing to speak? And you'd think maybe Carla Ward, but now Carla Ward's no longer at Astonville. You think Lauren Smith was very good at speaking, but now she's no longer at Bristol. And you kind of wonder, do we still have people willing to speak up about these things? It's a difficult bit.
I don't know, to be honest with you. Maybe the speaking up will be done over something differently. Maybe they don't have to speak up in the same way about the same things, but I still think championing women and everything from, equality of access to equality of opportunity, you do have to keep doing it, unfortunately, because there's still a lot of work to be done, quite honestly, and there's such disparity from top to bottom that I'm hopeful the new league will close some of that gap with commercial sponsorship that create a bigger trickle down. And I just hope that the women's game retains the best things about the women's game, but also be open to bringing different ideas into it so it can develop within that narrative.
I know you've spoken before about how motherhood maybe changed the way you managed or maybe changed your perspective a bit. What's it like now that he's old enough to kind of appreciate or see you on the sideline or on TV or even winning trophies?
Oh, no, don't get it easy. It gets harder because he can talk and he can say things. The Olympics was really hard for him. He really, really struggled. He wasn't with me the whole time. Some of that was by design, so I could get my head down. But what I realised in all of that is that he's a 6-year-old boy and I'm his mum. Forget anything else. He doesn't actually care about that stuff. He actually said to me this morning, these are the things I miss about Chelsea, Mum. I miss that we can't go to the training ground anymore. I said, okay, well, in the next camp, then do you want to come to a training session? Would that make you feel... He said, yeah, that would be more helpful. I think he had the routine that I had at Chelsea. I think now he doesn't understand what it is to win a gold medal. He just is like, you lot have taken my mum away. So at the end, when I embraced with him after the game, the only thing he said to me is, Mummy, you're coming home now. They've had enough of you. I need you to come home now. And I thought, you know what? Maybe he won't really realise that for years to come, but he for sure is so spoiled with winning because he keeps saying to me, which medal are you bringing home this week? It's a weekly thing.
No pressure,
And he puts it up on our live, to be honest with you. We have our tradition between us that we do this our own ceremony where he puts it up. And he's just like, Emma, Mum, this light won't hold it for much longer, so get a bigger light.
Yeah.
Not take them down and get framed.
Good priorities.
Yeah, definitely. When you think to your kind of US era now, and I mean, joining the US from Chelsea, it's a whole different beast in itself, the kind of pressure that comes with that. How did you manage that kind of transition with such little time?
You know what? I didn't have the time to think about it. We won the title. I had a birthday party for Harry on the Sunday with about 45 people at my house. And Monday morning I was on calls with the US. Wednesday I was in New York for a press conference. So I had no time to lead into that. And then in between that, spent all day, most of my evenings up until we met in July, putting together the programming. So I didn't have a break. And then by the time I got in July, one thing I was really, really clear at the beginning was, listen, no matter what you've been doing in the US, in order for me to be successful, you have to do it my way, 100%. And whether that's the game model, the coaching methodology, everything around it. And because of that, that made it easier. So we all agreed that up until the end of the Olympics, we would do it like that. And now we're in the middle of a post-Olympics review. We will talk about what we will keep, what we will stop, what we will, start doing, all of those things. But no, listen, they're a tremendous bunch. Great footballers, great humans, off the back of a negative experience in terms of them not achieving what they wanted to. It was easy, to be honest with you.
And you say it was easy, but the Olympics is probably one of the toughest tournaments in terms of the schedule, the travel, the logistics around it. You're playing multiple games in a week.
Yeah.
I think if you got to the final, it was like 8 games in 17 days or something, or 6 games in 17 days. So pretty crazy schedule to get your head around. But I guess if anyone is able to do it, with you and Chelsea at the end of seasons when you're playing every 3 or 4 days.
I kept saying it to the players. I said, this is normal for me. These are normal schedules. We've been doing these with Chelsea for a long period of time. Get your head down and grind. And when I say it was easy, of course it wasn't easy. That was huge effort from everyone. But it felt easy. It felt easy because the coming together of all of those things at the right time. And I did have credited the college education system, because when you've got everybody speaks the same language. So think about it yourself. Like, I might have had players at Chelsea, English isn't their first language. It takes time. So English is their first language. I was able to drop in like ideas, concepts around the way we want to play, and they'd apply it like that. I almost felt like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to speed up. I thought it would take me longer. And once I realised they picked something up, I didn't wait. I just went, I know you understand that next concept. Okay, next concept. And it kept going. And because, and Denise and I talked about this a lot, we loved the challenge of being able to deliver something with very little time. Like, because everyone was like, it won't be possible for you to imprint. Yeah, it will. Like, that's for me the challenge. Like, you're telling me I've got 9 days training. Brilliant. Yeah. I know I've got 9 sessions on the grass. I've got the classroom. I did video analysis pitch side. So in between, I was doing clips in between. And it was the learning curve was like that. And first of all, their brains were like, oh. By the end, got a gold medal because they were brilliant.
At the USA, they are notoriously hard to win over. They demand success from their team, understandably, and it has been a rough few years for them. You managed to win them over first time of asking. Like, do you realise how hard that was? How hard that is to do?
I promise you I haven't paid attention to any of it, because there's, like, you have to please yourself first and foremost. My job was to win, but you can't win without, like, just following a step-by-step process to that. And we all know that everyone in America expects you to win every game by multiple goals with a type of. So therefore, I'm never ever going to be able to live up to that. So don't worry about it. I'm never going to meet that expectation. So yes, I might meet it today, but you and I both know if I draw a game somewhere along the lines, it will be catastrophic. I follow exactly the same philosophy of don't pay attention to it, don't get too high of it, don't get too low with it either.
Yeah, memories are short in football, I guess.
Yeah, and generally in America, they think that you should win everything all of the time, and I think it's unrealistic, and I've been really clear about that publicly. The rest of the world, England, Spain, Germany, Brazil. Look how good Brazil were, Colombia. Now, there's a lot of top nations. Like, it's unrealistic to think the USA are going to run away with things.
For the last decade or so, this time of year, I imagine, has looked quite different for you.
Yeah.
How have you adapted to the new schedule and new requirements of international football? And I guess how useful is this period of time for you?
Listen, I need it. I can't. I couldn't do another minute of that grind, and not because I didn't love the team, the club, the league, the football, but it takes its toll. It took its toll, I think, mentally, physically on me. And so I'm really loving it. I'm loving that I can get up in the morning and take Harry to school and just do whatever, go work out, breathe, live a little bit. To be honest with you, I've only had this week or the last couple of weeks being able to do that because I took a holiday. So I haven't really kind of got into that yet enough for me to know what it really feels like. But there's a smile on my face every morning at the thought of being able to have a bit more energy and a bit more space to be creative again. Like, I'm loving where my brain is. Like, it's back again. That menopause fog is lifted a little bit, which is actually much harder than people really realise, that fog. So yeah, no, I'm really loving it.
Because of course it's not only a full-time difficult job, but everything else you've gone through outside of that as well to have to manage that too.
And I've said it, like the last, I'd say 3 years has been really, really hard. Yes, and I've been clear about, I didn't realise how hard grief was until I started to smile again this summer. I didn't realise how down I've been until I smiled again. But I literally went from really bad endometriosis to sudden menopause. Forget that it was a hysterectomy, it was a sudden menopause. And that was quite traumatic. And I literally, as I started to heal, and then my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And I felt like I've been in 2.5 years of like a really dark place personally. So that's why I had so much joy this summer, because I felt like this was the first time I just could lift. I felt lifted again. I felt lighter again, and I didn't really know that until I'd gone through that. So I'm happy to be back in that place again, and yeah, I'm grateful for it. Like, I dreamed about coaching the US Women's National Team. I didn't say it out loud because maybe I didn't think it would ever happen. And now I'm doing it. I literally feel like I lived every day this summer as one that was like, listen, I'm the custodian of this shirt and I want to leave it in the best place I possibly can. And what does that look like? Joy. Okay, what else does it look like? Try and win, because there's a bloody massive legacy to keep up to. And I know when we won the gold final, I sat with Mia Hamm, Julie Fowdy and Cindy Cohn. I just said to the three of them, I was like, you know how it feels for me and the girls right now to know we join your club? Like, this is like what we dreamed about. And I did this really cool thing over the summer with the 99ers that was like, I was like a fan. I was like fangirling them at the time. I was trying to use them as inspiration for the players. And I've just played out a dream for the last couple of months.
Amazing.
And finally, looking ahead to this autumn, England, USA at Wembley.
Great fun.
That's going to be pretty special, isn't it?
Again, like last time I went to that game, I was commentating for ITV, and I remember a young Alyssa Thompson coming on for USA, and I remember England were devastating that night. They were brilliant. I remember the crowd was electric. It was actually a really big transition game, but it was so much fun to watch. And it's so great for our players to come out of the US and come to England, to the home of the European champions, in a stadium that feels like home to me. So I'm very, very excited about it.
Can I put in a plea to have the return leg next year?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. Yes. That's the challenge, is you actually, because of the Nations League, we can't actually get a lot of European opponents out to the US with all the qualifiers and everything. But that just means that I'll have to go to Brazil or Colombia or somewhere else in the world. Like, that's the beauty. That's the thing I'm actually really enjoying, is that I'm going to different places.
Yeah.
Take us with you. We want England fixtures over in America. That'll be great.
No, I'd love to make that happen. I just think with the calendar's pretty tricky.
Yeah, fingers crossed at some point. This has been brilliant. It's been great to chat to you, especially with your international hat on now.
I know.
And yeah, we're excited to see how you get on and follow your journey. You've made us reluctant USA fans.
Oh no. Yeah, good. I'll take that.